I wasn't doing anything special that morning. Just laundry, white towels, gray sheets, the usual. I had my phone on the windowsill playing some crime podcast I wasn't really listening to, and then it buzzed. One message. From my husband. Just one line. I think we're done. I filed this morning. At first, I thought it was a joke. He has this dry, morbid sense of humor sometimes. But then I read it again. And again. And my stomach dropped like I was falling through the floor. No, we need to talk. No fight. No warning. 10 years of marriage. 2 kids. Holidays. Birthdays. Shared dreams. And he ended it in a goddamn text message. I froze. I don't even think I blinked. My hands were shaking. So bad I dropped the phone into the laundry basket. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. The third time, it didn't even ring. It went to that robotic voice like my number had been blocked. That's when the panic started to set in. I opened our bank app. I don't even know why. Maybe just to feel grounded, to check if the world was still spinning. But when the balance loaded, my breath caught in my throat. 0. Every. Single. Account. Savings. Checking. College fund. Even the travel account we use for family vacations. All of it gone. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by a pile of mismatched socks, completely gutted. Not just because he left me. Not just because he stole from me. But because he did it so casually. Like I was nothing more than a line item on his exit strategy. Like our life together was a business deal he just walked away from. And the worst part, our kids were upstairs, still in pajamas, asking if breakfast was ready. I didn't even know what to say. My hands were numb. My throat was closing. I had no plan, no warning, no backup. Just silence, a phone that wouldn't ring, and a man who had erased me overnight. But I need you to remember this part. I wasn't crying. Not yet. That came later. First, there was only disbelief. Then rage. And somewhere in between, the smallest flicker of something he never expected from me. It's strange, the things your brain clings to in moments of crisis. I couldn't tell you what day it was, or what I had eaten the night before, but I remember the way the sun hit the tile in the kitchen. I remember the sound of the fridge humming. I remember stirring oatmeal for the kids with hands that barely worked, because even though my marriage had just collapsed, breakfast still had to be made. I didn't tell them. Not yet. What do you even say? Daddy's not coming back, and by the way, we might be broke. They were too young to understand the weight of a disappearing father. I was barely old enough to understand it myself. I went through the motions that first day, barely speaking, barely breathing. I called my sister. I texted my best friend. Everyone was stunned, then furious. Not just that he left, but how he left. People were sending me screenshots of his Instagram like they were piecing together a murder case. He had unfollowed me, deleted every photo that had us in it, changed his bio to something vague and smug like New Beginnings. It felt surreal, like I had been erased, not just from his life, but from our history. Then came the whispers. You know the kind. The ones that start with "I don't want to be mean," but followed by some version of "Didn't you see this coming?" Or "He always seemed a little off." Suddenly, everyone was an expert on my marriage. People I hadn't spoken to in months slid into my DMs like they were tuning into a soap opera. "Hey girl, are you okay?" Because I always had a weird feeling about him. Gee, thanks. Where was that weird feeling when I was picking out our wedding china? But the real gut punch came when I met with our bank. I needed to know how this happened. How could he drain our accounts without me getting so much as a notification? Turns out, he'd been planning this for a while. Quiet transfers, strategic withdrawals, slowly bleeding us dry, so that when he finally hit send on that breakup text, the money was already sitting in an account with only his name on it. And here's the kicker, they couldn't do anything. Because we were married. Because the accounts were joint. Because trust, apparently, is a legal liability. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was financially ambushed. He had turned our whole marriage into a long con, and I was left holding the receipts. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow, as if a late-night message from him might bring some kind of closure, or at least an explanation. But it never came. Not an apology. Not a reason. Just silence. As if I'd been archived like an old file he didn't need anymore. But something strange started happening in that silence. I began to hear myself again. The woman I was before the marriage, before the kids, before the suffocating compromises. She was buried under a lot of hurt, but she was still there. And she was pissed. You see, he thought he'd left me powerless. That if he stripped away the money, the security, the home, I'd fall apart. What he didn't realize is that all he really did was clear the playing field. And now, I had nothing left to lose. That's the most dangerous kind of woman to underestimate. Looking back, it's not like there were fireworks or dramatic red flags waving in my face. No lipstick on the collar. No mysterious perfume. Just little moments. Tiny, silent warnings I shrugged off because that's what wives are taught to do. We explain away the discomfort. We call it stress, work, kids, routine. We don't call it what it is. A man quietly slipping out of a life he no longer values. He used to text me every morning. Just something simple. How'd you sleep? Or want coffee? It was our thing. But one day he stopped. I remember noticing, thinking, maybe he's just busy today. But that day turned into a week. And then it was like I was the only one reaching out, like I was holding a conversation with a ghost who still lived in our house. He started working late, not the occasional late night here and there every night. And when he did come home, he was so distant, like I was a coworker he barely remembered. I'd ask how his day was, and he'd answer in one syllable, fine. Always fine. I swear to God, if you're in a marriage and someone says fine more than 5 times a week, check their phone. There were strange charges on our card, too. Uber rides in neighborhoods he never mentioned. Restaurant bills for 2, when he told me he'd just grabbed a sandwich at his desk. Once, I asked about a $300 tab at some trendy lounge downtown. He laughed it off, said it was a team thing, and that the company would reimburse him. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. I had kids to bathe and laundry to fold. You don't have time to chase gut feelings when you're drowning in day-to-day survival. But the most telling sign, he stopped looking at me. Not in the way a man looks at a woman he wants, but in the way a partner acknowledges your existence. I could walk into the room, and he wouldn't even flinch. I dyed my hair once, when a full 2 shades darker. He didn't notice for 4 days. When I finally said something, he just shrugged and said, "Looks the same to me." There was this moment. I think about it now more than I should. We were sitting in the car outside the grocery store, and he was scrolling on his phone. I reached out to touch his hand, something small, casual. He pulled away like I'd startled him. Then he laughed nervously and said, "Sorry, I just wasn't expecting that. That shouldn't have been a red flag, right? But it was. It was. I just didn't know how to name it back then. Maybe I didn't want to, because naming it meant facing it. And facing it meant admitting the man I built a life with was no longer in it. Not really. But hindsight's cruel like that. It sharpens everything after the fact. And as I pieced those memories together in the wreckage he left behind, something started to shift in me. I stopped crying over him and started analyzing him. I went from devastated to obsessed. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a woman trying to survive, I was a woman trying to understand. And more importantly, trying to plan. Because if he had the audacity to leave me like that, if he thought he could just disappear without consequences, then he clearly never knew me at all. And what's coming next? That's going to be his real surprise. It started with an email. Not from him, of course not. He was still playing ghost. It was a confirmation message from one of our cloud storage accounts. The subject line was routine, forgettable. Your account login was successful. I almost deleted it, but something made me stop. That account hadn't been touched in months, maybe longer. We used it to back up documents, tax forms, old photos, mortgage paperwork. Nothing exciting. But the login alert wasn't from me. It wasn't even from a familiar device. It was a laptop I didn't recognize. And the timestamp, just 3 days after he left. Something clicked. He hadn't just disappeared. He was checking things. Quietly. Sloppily. Because in his rush to erase me from his life, he forgot one thing. He never changed the password. I logged in. At first, it was boring. Receipts, pay stubs, an old copy of our kids' birth certificates. Then I found it. A folder titled Personal. He always thought he was clever with naming things. The kind of guy who labels his affair car repairs in the calendar like no one's going to ask follow-up questions. Inside were PDFs, screenshots, scans of legal paperwork I hadn't seen before. His name, his lawyer, his timeline, and then her name. A woman I'd never heard of. But apparently, she'd been part of his life for nearly a year. There were flight confirmations, hotel bookings, dinner reservations. While we were still married, while I was at home managing school pickup and RSVPs and scraping dinner plates into the sink, he was out playing house with someone else. And it wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. He drafted separation agreements behind my back. Transferred assets. There was even a note to himself in one file. Amanda will be emotional. Delay negotiations. She'll want closure. That line hit me like a slap. He didn't just plan his escape. He banked on my collapse. He counted on me being too broken, too shocked, too needy to push back. He thought I'd crawl into bed and stay there, wrapped in regret, too paralyzed to fight. And that's when something in me snapped. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was pure, electric rage, but it was focused. Sharp. I wasn't crying over him. I wasn't even angry that he cheated. I was angry that he thought I was stupid, that he mistook my silence for submission, that he assumed I didn't know how to play the game just because I spent the last decade playing fair. But here's the thing. When someone shows you the rules they're playing by, it's not cheating to use them. It's survival. I got up from my desk, wiped my face, and opened a new tab. If he wanted a legal war, I would give him one. But not the screaming, crying, messy fight he expected. No. I'd be methodical, strategic, quiet. Because if there's one thing I've learned, you don't burn bridges when you're walking away. You burn them when you're planning to trap someone on the other side. I didn't rage text him. I didn't show up at his new apartment screaming or sobbing. That's what he expected. Some dramatic scene that he could twist into Amanda's unstable and use against me later. But instead of going nuclear, I went silent. Calculated. Cold. The first thing I did? I froze our credit. Not just mine, ours. You'd be amazed how fast a man panics when his shiny new lifestyle hits a brick wall of declined transactions. I filed fraud alerts. I opened a separate checking account in my name only, changed every login, every PIN, every password, down to the damn Netflix account. You don't get to steal my money and mooch off my streaming. Then I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I found a woman who specialized in high-conflict divorce and asset recovery. The kind of lawyer who made my stomach flip when she smiled, because I was grateful she was on my side and not his. She reviewed everything I found, the secret folder, the fake separation timeline, the hidden accounts. And she said just 5 words that lit a fire in my chest. He really thought you'd fold. I didn't fold. I documented. Quietly, relentlessly. I pulled bank statements, screen-capped social media posts, tracked IP addresses. I found emails he'd sent from his work computer to the woman I now called her. I even traced the so-called business trip that happened the same weekend I was home with strep throat and 2 sick kids. Spoiler, he was not in Dallas. He was in Tulum, posting sunset shots she took from across the table. But I wasn't just hunting him, I was rebuilding me. I scheduled therapy. I met with a financial advisor. I started applying for jobs again, jobs that scared me, stretched me, reminded me that I was never just his wife. I was someone before him. I would be someone after. Meanwhile, his life started to crack. Word got out. His family, who used to send me heart emojis on Facebook, suddenly went dark. I didn't need to say anything. Their silence was louder than my story. And then it happened. He called. Blocked number. Late at night. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded tired. Not apologetic, just tired. Like the weight of what he'd done was finally catching up. He mumbled something about talking things through, and how we could, maybe keep it civil. Civil. After draining my accounts, after lying, cheating, disappearing, he wanted civil. That's when I knew he wasn't scared of me. Not yet. So I made sure he would be. I sent my lawyer the go-ahead to file for full financial disclosure, to subpoena records, to challenge the prenup he insisted on years ago, because guess what? When you commit fraud and hide assets, prenups can get ripped apart. And then I hit him where it really hurt. His job. I didn't even have to lie. I just sent his company's HR department an anonymous packet with timelines, overlapping travel receipts, and one very specific code of conduct clause from their employee handbook highlighted in yellow. No threats, no accusations, just the facts. I never got a response. But a week later, his LinkedIn quietly changed. Open to work. By the time I was done, he wasn't just a man who lost his wife. He was a man who lost control. And all without me ever raising my voice. All without a single angry post or messy outburst. He took everything from me thinking I'd break. What he didn't realize, he didn't leave a woman behind. He built a weapon. Here's the thing about people like my husband. They don't plan for consequences. They plan for control. They rely on you to stay who you've always been. Accommodating, quiet, predictable. But when you stop playing your role, their whole script falls apart. He thought the worst had already happened. He'd lost his job. His affair was unraveling. Apparently she wasn't so interested in building a life once his nameplate came off the office door. I didn't have to say a word. That's the best part. I let the silence do the talking. But I still had one card left. See, while I'd been organizing my legal offense, I'd also been digging. Not out of bitterness, but because I knew there was more. Something wasn't adding up. His panic, his urgency, the way he ran, he wasn't just trying to escape me. He was trying to outrun something else. And I found it, tucked into an old shared cloud folder he must have forgotten about. A single scan document, a letter from the IRS, dated 8 months before he left. An audit notice, a big one. He'd been hiding unpaid taxes, large amounts, business write-offs that didn't exist, consulting expenses that looked suspiciously like 5-star hotel rooms. He was in trouble long before he walked out. And suddenly, everything made sense. The coldness, the secrecy, the need to disappear before the house of cards collapsed. He hadn't left me to find happiness. He'd left me to leave someone holding the bag. Me. But this time I didn't take the hit. I gathered the paperwork, hired a forensic accountant, and gave my lawyer the green light to go nuclear. We filed affidavits, showed the IRS proof of my non-involvement, and requested a full financial separation. I made it very clear I would not be his scapegoat. I was not paying for his lies. And the best part, I beat him to it. By the time he realized what I'd done, had his little lawyer draft up a pity-party proposal for reconciliation and working things out for the kids. I had already filed for divorce with a petition for full custody and damages. I served him at his friend's birthday dinner. A courier dropped the envelope on the table between the appetizers and the cake. I wasn't there, but I heard it was quiet for a long time after that. The twist wasn't just that I fought back. It was that I saw him, fully, clearly, maybe for the first time. Not as a husband, not even as a villain, just as a coward who thought he could play God without consequences. He thought he was writing the end of our story. What he didn't realize, I had picked up the pen. People always ask me how I got through it. Like there's a blueprint, a 5-step plan to surviving betrayal, financial ruin, and the collapse of a life you thought was solid beneath your feet. The truth? There's no graceful way through hell. You crawl. You scream into your pillow. You make peanut butter sandwiches for your kids with a blank stare while your world burns quietly behind your eyes. Some days, the hardest part wasn't what he did. It was pretending I was fine just long enough to get through bedtime. But eventually, the pretending turned into becoming. I stopped checking my phone, stopped needing the apology that was never coming. I stopped explaining myself, stopped overcompensating, stopped shrinking so someone else could feel bigger next to me. And little by little, the pieces of me he tried to discard started coming back together, but sharper this time. More deliberate, unapologetic. I sold the house, the one we bought together, painted together, made memories in. It hurt until it didn't, until I realized I didn't want a single square foot of that life in my rearview mirror. I got a new place. Smaller, simpler, but mine. Every plant, every frame, every piece of furniture was chosen for me, not for some image of us that had been fake long before I was ready to admit it. And the kids, they're okay. Better than okay, actually. Because kids don't need perfection. They need presence. They need love that doesn't come with conditions or secrets or sudden disappearances. They need to see their mother strong, not bitter, not broken, but real. That's what I give them now. Every day. As for him, last I heard, he moved again. Somewhere smaller. He's restructuring. which I'm pretty sure is code for life didn't go the way I thought it would once I burned everything down. But I don't track him. I don't stalk his socials. I don't care, because I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. And that freedom, it didn't come wrapped in a courtroom victory or a bank settlement. It came the moment I realized I was no longer afraid of being alone, of starting over, of being misunderstood. He left thinking he was cutting me loose. But the truth is, he was clearing space. Space I filled with people who respect me, work that fulfills me, and a version of myself I thought I lost somewhere between laundry piles and unanswered texts. I thought the story ended the day he sent that message. But it didn't. It started the moment I stood up, looked in the mirror, and decided I wasn't going to let the worst thing that happened to me be the thing that defined me. No. The worst thing that ever happened to me became the reason I became this woman. And honestly, I wouldn't trade her for the world.